you grow up as a soccer player dreaming of playing in the World Cup, and none of these players dreamed that they would be playing in the World Cup in their backyard.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Dasugian. The World Cup starts in a week. So how, in fact, is Team USA preparing? Plus, a group of House Republicans broke with their party and President Trump by pushing back on the war in Iran. We're going to break down the battle brewing inside the GOP. Up first, though. So Elon Musk's SpaceX is going public next week, meaning you could soon own a piece of it. But the price is also going to be astronomical. SpaceX said it's going to offer shares at $135 a pop, raising close to $75 billion. So if that happens, SpaceX would be the biggest IPO in history, surpassing Saudi Aramco, and it could make Elon Musk the world's first trillionaire. And SpaceX is not the only tech giant coming out big. OpenAI and Anthropic are also hoping to pass the $1 trillion mark in their initial public offerings. But are consumers buying into the future? And can they actually be profitable? With that, I want to bring in NBC News business and economy reporter, Allie Canal. Hey, Allie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. It's good to have you. So let's start with SpaceX.
Yes.
The company has filed with the SEC to go public. They are hoping to sell more than 555 million shares at $135 a pop, flat price. Explain for us why this is such a huge deal.
Yeah, you can just look at the money, the sheer scale of this at $135 a pop. That values this company at close to $2 trillion. And it's really interesting to look at the financials because from a revenue perspective, they're only generating just under $19 billion. So how do you justify $19 billion with a $2 trillion valuation? A lot of it is predicated on the growth of AI overall.
Wait, so can I stop you for a second? So it's predicated on basically AI's potential, not what AI is producing now.
Exactly.
Okay,
and that is the biggest risk that analysts have flagged, that when you're investing in something like this, it's not a guarantee that you're going to recoup that investment. It's not a guarantee that they're going to hit all of their growth targets. So that's the biggest concern here when it comes to this IPO. But it's also just going to inject a ton of capital into markets. The IPO market at large has been pretty stagnant over the past couple of years. We were dealing with super high interest rates that started around 2022. So a lot of companies were waiting on the sidelines. They were staying private for longer. So there is this expectation that potentially we could see the floodgates open for a lot of these companies making their debuts.
So just so I understand this, essentially it's invest in what we're producing now, but really invest in what we can produce in the future, what we can bring actually to you in the future, all the technology we can provide for you. So that's kind of SpaceX in a bucket. I also mentioned Anthropic, OpenAI as well. They're also kind of aiming to go public and become publicly traded companies. Anthropic said that they actually filed Monday for an IPO just about a week ago. Anthropic announced it was valued at $965 billion. OpenAI, $852 billion is their valuation. When and if all of these, these two companies hit the stock market, what could that mean for investors? And what could that actually mean for the general public, if anything?
Yeah, it's really hard to wrap your mind around some of these numbers. It's quite wild. And for the general public, if you think about your average investor, a lot of them are passive investors. You look at your 401k, your retirement accounts, you're probably plugged into some sort of an index fund. So you don't have to go and be a stock picker. You can just sit back and collect money that's growing within these major indexes. So the rules have changed a little bit for these listing places like the NASDAQ for the New York Stock Exchange. Before, when these companies debuted, there was a waiting period around 3 months before they were included in these index funds. Now, as little as 2 weeks later, these massive companies with unproven financial models can now be added to the index funds. And typically when you see a company debut, the first day of trading is very volatile. The first few weeks of trading are very volatile because people are trying to price what the value is of this particular company. So now that these companies like your OpenAIs, your SpaceXs, that they can be included in these passive investment funds.
You can invest in them.
You can have that exposure.
Your 401k could be invested in these funds.
Exactly. You will have exposure
So you
to
could
that
actually get a part of these $1 trillion companies.
without even going and purchasing that stock yourself. Now, that could be a positive thing thing if the SpaceX stock explodes, or it could be a negative thing if it's very volatile. And again, this is an unprofitable company, and there isn't much of a choice that you have as an investor. I guess you would have to completely pull out of that passive fund, which is a lot harder to do today than it was in the past, as a lot of Americans rely on those types of investments.
There is like a overarching theme in this conversation, which is it's not profitable now.
Yeah.
Right? These companies are not making money right now. So again, if you are just regular Joe like you and me, and you're wanting to invest in one of these things as they hit the stock markets, you again are investing in an idea.
And potential.
Right?
Yeah. And for a company like SpaceX, the reason that they're going public right now is they need money. They want to send humans to Mars one day.
Yeah.
They want to make AI data centers in space. They want to build these rocket ships. None of that is cheap. So in order to do that, they are basically going out there to the public markets and saying, hey, investors, you come and invest in our company and you can have a piece of history.
But going back to the issue of money, is there a path for profitability for these companies?
Yeah, and that's the question that is going to have to be answered during these earnings calls, during these earnings reports. Where's the growth story? Can these companies diversify enough to make sure that they're providing all the opportunities to investors? Now, SpaceX says that the broader AI market will be worth over $26 trillion.
Wow.
So that was part of their calculus when they were determining their own
Elon
valuation.
Musk is going to be worth how much?
Gosh. Well, I mean, depending on what this IPO comes out to be next week, he's on track to be the world's first trillionaire.
Wow.
With a T. That is insane that we're even talking about something like this. But yeah, I mean, there is, I think, the biggest question mark. You have to believe in the AI story. You have to look at the data centers. You have to look at the use cases. AI is becoming more part of our everyday lives, of corporations, and people seem to be excited about the possibility. But the question mark is the timeline. How long until these investments pay off? Is it 2 years? Is it 10? Is it 15? And depending on where you're at in your investment journey, that's a critical question.
So then what are next steps for these three companies? When you're looking at the timeline, when could feasibly people start to invest? And then when could they see a payoff?
So OpenAI hasn't filed yet to go public. Likely we could see them file later summer and they could go public in the fall. Anthropic already filed, so I expect that IPO very shortly. And then for SpaceX, next Friday. That's the day that you can potentially invest in this company. And it's sort of this boom, boom, boom. And it's very top heavy when you think about this IPO market. We're still in recovery mode for public markets. And even though 2026 is likely to be a record-setting year, it's not due to the fact that we're having a ton of companies come to public markets. It's due to the fact that we have these three major AI-driven companies worth trillions of dollars that are now entering this space.
Allie, Canal, thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
So the GOP may still be the party of President Donald Trump, but some Republican lawmakers are now pushing back. On Wednesday, 4 House Republicans joined with all Democrats to pass a resolution directing the president to remove U.S. forces from the war with Iran. It's a mostly symbolic measure, but it is a sign of the growing discontent in the Republican Party over this war. So how is President Trump responding? And are there other issues where we could see members of the GOP break with the president? For this, I want to bring in Mel Zanona, Capitol Hill correspondent for NBC News. Hey, Mel.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, so Thomas Massie, Republican from Kentucky, was one of the folks who broke with the party to pass the War Powers Resolution. We have talked about how President Trump ousted Massie in his most recent primary. But who were the other Republicans who voted with the Democrats, and why did they do so?
I think it's really fascinating to look at the breakdown of these lawmakers. So 2 of them are in really competitive, tough races this fall. That's Tom Barrett of Michigan, as well as Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania. They're going to be in some of the most competitive House races in November. And so I think that sends a message that the war is not playing well back home in these moderate swing districts that Republicans are going to need to keep the majority. And in fact, in talking to these lawmakers yesterday after the vote, they said as much. They said, gas prices are sky high. Affordability is such an issue for our constituents. We can't defend this war anymore. And now is the time to start bringing people home. It's time to end the conflict. So we are starting to see that bubble up. The other two Republicans who voted for this were Thomas Massie, as you mentioned, who's always kind of been a thorn in Trump's side. He has no qualms about bucking the president. It's why he ended up losing his primary recently. So he's kind of unleashed. And then you had Warren Davidson of Ohio, who's also been someone who's a constitutionalist. He's libertarian leaning. He was approaching this from a constitutional perspective and said, hey, look, the law is pretty clear. After 60 days, Trump is supposed to seek congressional authority in order to continue this conflict, which Trump has not done. In fact, he argued he doesn't need to do that because technically they have this ceasefire. So clearly that is not sitting well with at least enough Republicans to put this over the finish line with Democrats.
What I thought, Mel, was interesting is as I was talking to Ryan Nobles, our colleague and your colleague on Capitol Hill, he mentioned how some of these folks like Thomas Massie, who were primaried by the president, could very much wield their power in this way, for instance, right? Coming out, against the president in ways that may actually harm him because they have no real skin in the game. And I'm wondering if we feel as if we're going to start to see more things like this happen over the next 6 months or so during this lame duck period for some of the folks that have been primaried during this season.
I mean, we're already seeing it. There have been a number of issues where some of these Republicans, like Bill Cassidy, a Republican senator who lost his primary because of Trump, and John Cornyn, a Texas Republican who lost his primary because of Trump, have come out against key parts of the Trump's agenda, whether that's ballroom funding, whether it's the anti-weaponization fund. Now we're seeing this play out with Iran war powers. We could also see it playing out with if Trump tries to get some of his new nominees confirmed, like Todd. He's acting AG right now. He wants to make him permanent AG. And so, yes, this could be a huge problem for Trump.
Yeah.
We kind of call it the YOLO caucus, or now we're calling it the FAFO caucus. F around and find out.
Oh, okay,
FAFO.
got it.
Yeah, because these members, they have no loyalty anymore to Trump. They have no reason to stand up for him anymore. They are complete free agents on Capitol Hill.
Okay, so that said, could we actually see a possible war powers resolution have some teeth? Because this was kind of more symbolic. Could more Republicans vote with Democrats on this in the future?
That was something that the White House officials on background pointed out to us yesterday after this passed, trying to really downplay it, saying, it's not constitutional, it has no binding. Even if the Senate were to pass something identical, it's not something that the president actually has to pay attention to. But yes, I will tell you, there's a reason why it touched such a nerve with President Trump. If he didn't care, if they didn't think this was a big deal, even though it's symbolic, he wouldn't have come out with that Truth Social post, ripping into these four Republicans. They also wouldn't have, on Capitol Hill, GOP leaders tried so desperately to prevent this from happening. Clearly, they wanted to avoid this outcome, despite it being a symbolic one.
I want to talk about acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. The president announced that he's nominating him to take on the AG role permanently. Blanche has been at the center of the anti-weaponization fund, which is incredibly controversial and not popular on Capitol Hill. He said on Tuesday that the DOJ is, quote, not moving forward with the fund, period. But then Trump said he'd have to ask his lawyers and asked about the anti-weaponization fund. Could Blanche's involvement in bringing the anti-weaponization fund to the forefront, in weaponizing the DOJ against the president's perceived enemies, could all of these things possibly factor into whether or not he could feasibly get the votes to be confirmed as the next Attorney General of the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly for Democrats, that's the case. We saw John Fetterman, who actually supported Pam Bondi for Attorney General, come out today and say he could not support Todd Blanche, in part because of the concerns about him being the personal lawyer for the president, concerns about this weaponization and going after political enemies. The real question, of course, is what Republicans think. And so far, we are seeing signs of potential trouble. There have been a handful of members, including some of those YOLO caucus members I mentioned, like your Tillises and your Cornyn, who have expressed some concern.
FOFA. What was it called? Not YOLO.
FAFO.
FAFO. FAFO.
We do like to say YOLO because Tillis wears a bolo tie, so it has some nice YOLO bolo. When he's wearing the bolo tie, we know he's definitely going to go YOLO.
I got it.
But because of the makeup of the Judiciary Committee, it just takes one Republican to vote no in committee to prevent him from going forward. And so I think it's going to be really difficult, actually, to get Todd Blanche confirmed. Now, there's some questions. There is some precedent from the Biden administration where you can keep someone on in an acting capacity, even past the time that they're supposed to. But this is going to set up yet another clash on Capitol Hill between Republicans and the president.
Mel Zanona on Capitol Hill. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to leave you with our extra scoop today. Yesterday, we had the NBA. By the way, that game last night. Go Knicks. Today, it's the World Cup. The biggest event in soccer kicks off next week. Team USA is squeezing in one or two last practices at a brand new $250 million training facility in Fayetteville, Georgia. And that is where we find NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk, who is on the sidelines for us. Hey, Steph.
Hey, yes. I mean, I definitely got the best assignment this week.
You always get the best assignment. Let's be clear. What's the energy like down there? And by the way, I heard there was a flyover.
Yeah, it was very cool. A local stunt team in their planes. This is not a military flyover, but it was a local team, flew over. It was great to send the team off. They are heading off later on to Chicago. They've got their second friendly game against Germany. And then, yes, they fly to L.A. A week from tomorrow is their first game of the tournament, and they're playing Paraguay.
This is also the first year that the team has been able to use the facility that you're at right now in Fayetteville.
Right.
What is this facility like?
So it's incredible. I was surprised to hear that U.S. Soccer never had a dedicated training facility. This is the first dedicated training facility for soccer in the country, and every U.S. team is here. So it's not just the men; it's the men and the women. There are actually 26 teams in total, and this is a huge facility. It's $250 million worth. There's this incredible gym, a 10,000 square foot gym that Nike put in that is really remarkable, just for soccer players, and they have a ton of fields out here. It's set up to hold kind of tournaments and the rest, but this will be where the teams come to train. So there's a lot of enthusiasm there. And, I was talking to some team members. The last World Cup, Yaz, was more than 30 years ago here in the U.S. And so a lot of these players weren't alive during that time, except for the captain. Tim Ream was alive. He's 38, but he was little.
You and I were, by the way. You and I were alive.
Oh, yeah, definitively. Definitively alive. But listen, you grow up as a soccer player dreaming of playing in the World Cup, and none of these players dreamed that they would be playing in the World Cup in their backyard. And there is just, it's big, and it's bigger because of that. They played a friendly game in Charlotte, and the captain, Tim Ream, who normally plays at Charlotte, told me that normally for a Major League Soccer game, they'll open up about half the stadium. But for this friendly game against Senegal, they opened up the whole stadium, and they basically filled it. Almost 60,000 people came to a friendly.
Awesome.
Not even part of the tournament. And he was telling me in our conversation just how it was tremendous to be in that stadium he's so familiar with, and it just felt different. And as is typically the case in this country, if they start to win, this country is going to lose its mind.
Course.
As soon as it starts to happen, there is going to be this overwhelming enthusiasm. NBA finals be damned. People are going to get into it, I think.
Settle down. Settle down with that.
Yeah, right.
Settle down with the NBA finals, be damned. But I agree. Americans like them some winners. Are they ready, though? Because the women's team, obviously, the U.S. women's team, they've won 4 times. The men have never won. Do they think they can pull through?
When they talk about favorites for this tournament, France, Spain, Argentina, the U.S. is definitely not on that list. People talk about success getting to the round of 16, but when you talk to them, they're aware they have home field advantage, and they want to work that. And that's going to really help them in these critical games where the pressure's on, to have that support of the crowd. Don't underestimate the effect that can have, and this country rallying behind their success. So they want to go far.
I mean, look, I'm going to be watching. I watched the friendlies U.S.-Senegal game. I can't wait to watch all these games on television, by the way, because I cannot afford to go to any of the actual games.
I know.
But, Steph, you're lucky, of course, to see them train. So for that, Steph Gosk, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, that is going to do it for us. Here's the scoop from NBC News. I'm Yasmin Dasugan. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever the day may bring. And if you like what you heard and you saw, press the subscribe button. We'll see you tomorrow.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.